I am George E. Rice III. I serve as the director of the Presidential Scholars Program here at Montgomery College in Montgomery County, Maryland. Our program has been around since 2021. I just finished my second full year as the director of this program. We seek to serve underrepresented college students who are men, or who identify as men, and they are potential first generation college students. And we provide wraparound services, personal development, leadership development, so that they have the best opportunity to become more resourceful and resilient in their journey here at MC, whether they are pursuing a 2-year degree or they're pursuing a certificate of some sort.
Before becoming a director, do you have any additional professional background that has helped you to become the director?
Of course, I've been working in higher ed since 2000. And having worked at small and large private institutions, I have been cut out to work with students. I've always been an educator or in the profession where I'm a frontline employee. I'm interfacing with students. But the work I've been doing with Black and brown men specifically, or working with young people, but more specifically with Black and brown men, spans the years of about 20 to 25 years. So between going from a teacher in the classroom, teaching middle school math and science, to working in trio programs, Upward Bound. I worked in Upward Bound when I was in Ohio. I was the assistant director there, and that's a college preparatory program for those people who don't know. Grant funded program has been around for a long time under the Education Act of 1965. And honestly, I think the prerequisite for working with young people is that you have to see people, you have to care about people, you have to have a heart for wanting to see other people grow and evolve. And I come from a family of educators, so I can say a lot of this education, my background in education, I used to try to run from being an educator, but I realized that some things are just a part of your DNA. And it's been the family business for as long as I know on both sides of my family. And so I love what I do. So it's never really seemed like work. In order to be qualified, prepare myself to get a career like I have now, I think the number one thing I had to do was just be open to listening. Number two, find where I can fit and help people along their journey versus dictate their journey. I've coached basketball for more than 20 years. And so most people say, man, you're a coach, you tell people what to do. I'm like, no, I help people on their journey. They have an idea of who they want to become, even if they don't know what they want to do. And I think that's more important. And I think college, in my years of being an educator, I think that's the miracle of college. I don't think you have to know what you want to do before, during, or after you graduate. I just think you have to know that you want to position yourself to earn a living that, number one, that you enjoy, number two, that's going to be fiscally and financially sustainable. And so that even as you grow and evolve as a person and professional, you have a legacy you can leave to the next generation that may be just as good as, if not better than, the one that was left to you. You have to see people for who they are and accept them for who they are. But at the same time, you see a lot of yourself in them. I know, I always say, especially now that I've worked with college students since 2000, I always put myself in the mindset of an 18-year-old. And I don't ask them what's wrong. If we are talking about something, I don't ask them what's wrong with them. I'm like, what happened to you? What happened to you to make you think this way? What happened to you to make you move this way? Who encouraged you? Who discouraged you? How can I serve as a happy medium between where you are and who you are and where you want to go and who you want to be? I think one thing that's also, you have to almost train yourself or be really understanding about is, like you said, just enjoy the present, because you can't speed up time and you can't slow it down. And give yourself grace. Even as I work with young people, I have to give myself grace. I have to extend them grace first, because I realize they have questions. I may not have the answers, but I may be able to direct them to somebody else who can answer their question more extensively or more intelligently. So I know for a fact their humility is something that is an absolute must-have. Grace, humility, gratitude, all of the above. Aside from all of the credentials I have, yes, I have a bachelor's in psychology from Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia, and I have a master's in counseling from Montgomery State University. And so I tell people I'm the best or the worst of both worlds. I'm a coach and a counselor. A coach sees what you can't see, and a counselor hears what you don't say. So developing that skill over the years by extending grace, by receiving people just where they are, has helped me really develop my gift as an intuitionist and pick up on certain energy, certain stuff you just feel. Like I can tell if somebody is not in a good mood. I can tell if something's really bothering them. I can tell if they haven't had much sleep. You do become an intuitionist if you're working with people. Whether you like to or whether you want to or not, I believe it's something that it's imperative that you develop if you want to excel in this particular field of endeavor.
Okay, thank you. I heard you mention some of the qualities that you resonate with or that you grew into as you worked in this profession or even through your background. Overall, there's a quote that I often say to people that is, to be seen is to be heard, and to be heard is to be helped. And I heard you state that sometimes you have to see them, you have to see these students, you have to be able to talk to them, but you also have to be able to hear what they're not saying as far as paying attention to them. So I want to ask as far as challenges and adapting in your work field, can you explain a time when you had to adapt to a significant change or face the unexpected obstacle and you had to basically pivot through that to make sure that you were able to work at the capacity that you needed to succeed for the goal of your organization?
Professionally, I've had to pivot when me and my family moved from Ohio to here, pivoting in a way in which I felt like, listen, do I really need to stay in the field of education because the cost of living here is significantly higher? For a while, I tried some additional fields of endeavor that weren't directly connected to education. And I realized who I am versus what I do. I'm a pretty confident person. I believe if I have the right training, there's not too many things I can't accomplish. However, I realized that part of my pivoting had nothing to do with what I do for a living. I realized that my pivoting had to do with who do I need to be when I show up? Who do I need to be at home? Who do I need to be at work? And not that I'm the be all to end all or the answer man, but how do I need to receive people? There have been times in which, and this is from my first few jobs out of undergrad, there was a young man, gentle giant, and we were having some issues with him. He was having problems in every class. His mom had pretty much lost all control. And so everybody is just giving him the business. They're raising their voices. And I'm like, listen, everybody take a time out. The last thing he needs to hear from anybody is anything else negative or somebody talking at a high volume to him. And I took him in the hallway and I said, what happened to you? I said, you hit a growth spurt at some point. He was like, yeah. I said, what happened? What changed? And how I pivoted from being the male figure, because I think what was modeled for me in terms of the men I watched in my own home, in my neighborhood, in several neighborhoods I grew up in Ohio, I saw Black men work and I saw them provide and I saw them always barking orders at times. And even as a coach, I realized, I was like, that's not who I have to be in order to communicate. If I'm yelling at a young person and everybody else is yelling at this young person, I'm only corresponding. At some point, they're going to turn down the noise. When I make the decision to literally see them and hear them and speak to them from the heart versus my head, I pivot to being somebody who really becomes the counselor versus the coach. The coach will see what you can't see, but I'm hearing what you don't say. And so when I adopted that model, I stopped raising my voice as a coach. Stopped allowing my anger that was really, if they did something wrong, I learned how to pivot and just be versus do, because I realized, especially a lot of the young men that I've worked with, all they've ever heard is men or Black or brown men yell at them, correspond versus connect to them, or even allow them opportunities to speak. Hey man, why'd you make that decision? So instead of blaming, I started doing more listening. So I think that's the biggest pivot I've made. And being a father will help you do that too. Parents have most of the answers, but not all of them. It doesn't matter what area. You may be familiar with this phrase. Children are seen and not. It's the worst thing you can say to a young person. Because I heard it. I was like, what if I have a question? And a lot of times you may have some people who take that particular proverb or mantra to heart in the classroom, or when it's time for them to advocate for themselves in other circles. And so I think the biggest pivot I've made across the board is I went from a reactor to a responder. First responders that we know of, police, firefighters, whomever, people in the military, they don't necessarily react, they respond. Well, what's the difference? We're on the front lines, you're on the front lines working with students. You're a first responder. I'm a first responder. We're not a first reactor. I think that's the biggest pivot, especially with every generation that's coming around. We get the opportunity. We don't have to. We get to make the choice to be responders versus reactors. And I think way too often, men, more specifically Black and brown men, have been called upon to be reactors. However, I believe the biggest pivot in going from corresponding to connecting is that there is such thing as a gentleman. And just because you're a gentleman doesn't mean that you're not manly. As I've pivoted from a reactor to a responder, I am actually maximizing all of the things that a gentleman and a scholar can be to other potential gentlemen and scholars and young women too. But the work I do directly with my guys, I tell my guys now in my current program, I said, I will never raise my voice at any of you all. I said, it's counterproductive. Why would I do that? You're a man, you're 18. There's no reason for me to.
I wanted to know if students wanted to attend this program, what is the benefits that come with this program? Do the program offer them mentorship, and do they have to be a student wanting to come to Montgomery College, or is this an opportunity that's open for all colored young men who want to become a college scholar and proceed in their post-secondary pathways?
Our program is open to any male who is an official student at Montgomery College. In order to be accepted and receive the full benefits of our program, they have to be taking at least 6 credits per semester. So they can take as few as 6 and as many as 18. And wraparound services they receive from us, we do have guest speakers that come in to talk about several things, whether it's etiquette, leadership development, how to get an internship, resourcefulness and resilience. We've actually had people to come in to show people how to do their LinkedIn profiles. We've had the gamut of Title IX offices come in, people from the Student Wellness Center. They've been able to access resources they didn't know they had access to. Even students who don't necessarily have health care, there are ways that they can get access to free health screenings. So there's a lot of different academic and personal and health resources that we expose them to. One thing I say to them is, my network is your network. And I tell them, in the time that we know each other, from now until whenever you decide to stop communicating or corresponding with me, if you don't leverage me as a resource, that's your fault. There is a conference called Afrotech, and it takes place in Houston, Texas, every year, right around October, first or second weekend of October. I sent 2 guys last year. They had never heard of it. I sent them. And this is a place where there's a lot of minorities that are represented in tech spaces. It doesn't matter where they're working. All fields of tech and endeavor. If it's cyber, if it's web development, it doesn't matter. If it's social media, it's all of the above. Right now, one of my students is in Cupertino, California. And if that sounds familiar, that's where Apple's headquarters reside. He went to that conference, connected with one person, simply followed up, sent him his resume. Before Christmas, he had the internship with Apple headquarters, and he's been there to the end of August. He has now transferred to University of Maryland, but now his network has grown. So he's going to come back and expose anybody else want an internship at the headquarters. If you're interested, this is who you need to connect. And it's an opportunity for me, for us, to really, as men, number one, ask for help. Because, of course, it's an ego thing. It's a pride thing. But anybody who hasn't been able to thrive within the brotherhood, known as Presidential Scholars Program, it's only because they refuse to ask for help. It wasn't because they weren't encouraged or reminded. So you just refuse to ask for help. I said, okay, it's your system, your results. And our thing is develop a system that works for you. It doesn't have to look like mine, as long as you have a system. Now, if you would like me to tweak your system so you can get more out of it, so you can work smarter, not harder, you get better results, I can help you. Maybe somebody else can help you. But I think the beauty of the brotherhood is not me being at the head of the brotherhood. It's the brothers themselves coaching each other. So even though I have most of the coaching experience, I'm not the only coach in the brotherhood, which I think is a beautiful thing. So I think once other men see guys that are maybe 2 or 3 semesters ahead of them, they're like, man, it's a lot of power in the room. Part of being a team is you have to be mindful of how you show up and how other people view how you show up. Hope to make them more self-aware and at the same time more self-confident.
If you could ask your younger self who your role model would be for you to be successful in your profession today, who would you say that role model was?
My father. My father. Every day of the week and twice on Sunday.
For a student who do not have a role model that has been there to help them to tackle the challenges to meet their goal, what is a piece of advice you would give them if they have been approached with failure or rejection while chasing their goal?
There's two ways I could answer that. A very good friend of mine, she would always say, whatever you want is within your reach. That's one thing she would say. And it sounds prophetic when you think about it. Whatever you want is within your reach. That's what most people think because of their limited way of thinking. I always tell people, if you don't have a role model, look at yourself. Take the time to really think about yourself. Say, you know what? You've been more resilient than you realize. And some people are like, no, man, you know, what if I don't like myself? Oh, okay. You don't have to like yourself to understand that you've been resilient through some things, some challenges that you face. And challenges could be large, medium, or small. Some people think challenges such as whatever. It could be low self-esteem. It could be poverty. It could be depression or anxiety. All of these challenges. We've all found a way or made a way to be resilient. So I would say, look at yourself first. Think of the hardest thing you've ever overcome or the hardest thing you're still trying to deal with. The concept of not feeling like you're enough, the concept of not being loved, the concept of maybe not having, quote unquote, enough male role models in your ecosystem. One question we ask every brother in the brotherhood is this: what was the model of male leadership you saw in your home or in your neighborhood, and how did that impact you? And even if you didn't see it in your neighborhood, what did you see on TV? How did that impact you? Did you see men on TV? What did you see them do? And my thing is that you always have a reference point for your individual capacity and how you show up in certain circles. And so I always remind them, like, no, you are a model of resilience, whether you realize it or not. Don't stop there with being your own model, your own self being your own role model, but look for other people, places, or experiences that are going to allow you to be resilient.
Absolutely. You're your own worst enemy, right?
Or your own best hero.
Thank you for your time, and I hope that students will be able to meet you soon when you come out to visit the schools.